Hello, I'm Keith Reynolds, and welcome to SMarketPlace, where we talk sales, marketing, and rock and roll. I'm here with my good friend Tom and collaborator. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, how's it going?
It's good. It's good.
It dawned on me, Keith, that you are sort of a deadhead for the Rolling Stones lately.
That's
You've
right.
you've
I'm a
been
stonehead.
traveling with them by van and everything else. So hopefully that's been a blast.
Yeah. So I traveled 9 days to Chicago to see the Rolling Stones for the third time, and we camped our way across Colorado, Nebraska, Iowa, and Illinois, and that was a lot of fun. And then we came back and had 2 days of work, and then it was the 4th of July.
All right, all right.
So following the Stones, yeah. And I have one more concert this summer. How about you?
Oh, yeah, I'm going to see Goose in Portland, Oregon, which I'm excited about with a bunch of friends, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of stuff that comes up in the meantime.
That's cool. I'm seeing Willie Nelson, uh, Bob Dylan, and Billy Strings at the Gorge in August.
Oh my Lord.
How about that?
That's second to Red Rocks.
Yeah, that's what several people have said to me. All right, well, let's get right on to our guest. Um, Hi, Michael.
Hey, how are you? Good to
Good,
see you,
good.
Keith. Tom, good to
All
see you.
right, great to see you.
Michael Bendit and I've known each other for, I guess, 8 or 9 years. We met through the American Marketing Association, and then we've done some podcasting together early on when the pandemic started, and people started getting online, and then you started the Trusted Referral Network to correlate with your work, and I'll let you introduce yourself from there. But another great step in our collaboration.
Absolutely. Yes, we've known each other quite some time. When you lived out east here, I'm in Connecticut. Actually, where you used to live, not too far from New York City.
That's right.
And my you mentioned the Trusted Referral Network, so we'll talk about that first. I'm a big believer in networking and paying it forward and connecting with people and building trust. That's why I named the network the Trusted Referral Network. What's unique about it, and I think what draws people, is that it's just for marketing services providers. So it's for people like myself, people like you, people that have agencies, and those that do provide niche services like copywriting or search engine optimization, or search engine marketing, graphic design. They need other people to collaborate with because their clients need more than just the one single service that they provide. So there's real opportunities for referring business, getting to know one another, learning from each other, and building a vibrant community. My personal business is all about software development. I'm a sales rep. I'm out there doing a lot of networking. So I'm a sales rep for software development teams. And I've been doing that since 2011. And a lot of our work is in the marketing world, which is why I founded the Trusted Referral Network.
And we've never been able to hit the home run, but we've brought a couple of opportunities when I thought they were right. And what I've learned in working with you is that you bring a really solid business background. And I think you were in consulting, if I remember. Am I right?
I was, yeah. So I've been sort of on the business side of tech for pretty much my entire career. I studied computer science engineering, actually, undergrad, along with business. So it was a dual degree program many years ago. I tell people, I studied computer science programming, and back then a tablet is something that you chiseled your code on, as opposed to something that you have to read as an electronic device. A little bit of a dad joke. But since then, I've been on the business side of technology, got my MBA, worked with a large consulting firm for their tech clients doing strategy and operations work. Then went off and went into the new business development world with Lucent, the company that has since been acquired, but was part of the AT&T mothership, so to speak, many years ago. And I was focused working with the folks in Bell Labs. Was a great job getting new technologies out of their, they had a treasure trove. They had 30,000 patents. And many of them were just not being used, right? Because there's only so much you could use in their business. Great industry, had a lot of fun doing it, starting new businesses, and then got laid off in 2003, .com bust, and said, well, I have consulting skills, and started going independent, working with tech firms. And in 2011, started focusing on helping one company, somebody that I met who was a fellow alumni from the University of Pennsylvania, who had a small software development shop. And I found that the thing that I could do that would bring most value was to bring business, right? So I started selling on behalf of that company on commission only. And that's the model of my business. I represent about a dozen teams. And my job is it's a lot like a broker, right? Like an insurance broker, bring the right team to the client, right? One that's going to work for them based on their skills, what they have to offer. And the client doesn't pay me directly. Just like when you get insurance, you don't pay the broker directly. They get paid by the insurance company. Ultimately, it's built into the cost, right? Can't get away from the cost of sales. But I'm very, my focus is on making the right match, right? Because I'm somewhat agnostic. I've got a dozen teams that I can draw from and want to make the match for what the client needs.
I and Tom share coming out of very large industry with you, and then bringing that to small business. I'd love to, explore that a little bit. Also, how you apply the engineering, software engineering, plus the MBA, plus the commission-only sales. I mean, that's a value proposition that offers everybody a win-win. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, it's been working out for me. I guess some people shy away from commission sales, but I'm comfortable with it because I know that I'm not bound by a monthly retainer to deliver a certain amount of business to one particular client. I could be agnostic and focus on what's right for the client. And a lot of times that involves helping the client think through the whole process, because in many cases, my clients have never bought software development services before. And it's almost like I got a new car. Now I have to bring it to somebody to get fixed, and I know nothing about what's under the hood. So part of my job is to help them be successful in making those decisions. We work with both startups, small and mid-sized companies. We also partner a lot with other marketing agencies. But a lot of what I do is consultative, right? It's helping the client figure out how they should invest, how they should test their ideas. For example, one thing we do a lot is if somebody has a new idea that they want to build software around, usually there's a component or two that are the risky ones, right? The highest risk, the highest hurdles. And we say, listen, don't spend your money until you figure out, can you get over those hurdles technically or whatever it happens to be. Let's do a proof of concept first. Spend your money wisely, figure out, but attack the hardest part first to make sure the business can work, at least from a technical perspective. So that's a bit of business advice that in some respects can work against me, right? I don't say jump in with both feet, let's spend $100,000 and get this thing done. I say, let's spend $10,000 and make sure it's doable.
Yeah.
So you also, I was thinking as you were talking, you have a perspective on how to sell, but also you've watched technology over the last 14 years
God, maybe
change
longer.
in the marketing segment. Like what's your bird's eye view of seeing that change where are we going?
Sure. So Martech is a passion of mine. There is, since the shift to digital marketing, right? There's so much technology that has come into play, and it can be overwhelming, um, and most companies struggle with it. Even large companies struggle with integrating different systems. Um, I'm a big proponent of try to keep it simple, because there's a big um, component of success that has a lot to do with learning and adapting and adopting. So take it slow. Um, go down a path, but take on one or two, at most three new products at a time to build your capabilities. But it is amazing what's being done now, certainly with targeting, with AI, the ability, for example, using over-the-top television to target a particular home, you know, um, with with all of the data that marketers have about who lives in that home and what do they do for a living and what do they buy. That is one of the most, I think, incredible and most powerful aspects of applying technology to marketing, is this micro targeting. CPM, cost per thousand, is really a very high level measure, right? How many people can I reach? You want to reach the right people. You don't want to just reach, 1,000 people. And you can do that now with all the technology out there.
That's right.
You know, before you even begin the marketing process, I think there are so many companies that really struggle with their identity first,
Absolutely.
and certainly expressing themselves through e-commerce and their website, and everything that will go out to the potential customer. How do you help companies really identify who they are so that you can sort of micro target and micro market to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am not a branding expert. I mean, there are people in my network that do just that, help them understand how they need to position themselves. A lot of it, of course, has to do with who they are already. If they're an established company, they've established a brand, and there's probably some real strength to that brand. But in many cases, they haven't promoted it enough, and they haven't promoted it to the right audience. So it's important, and this is, I think, what's great about the Trusted Referral Network and networking with other people in the marketing world. I can make a recommendation and say, listen, it would be really helpful if you had a greater focus around who you are and what makes you different, because the copy, for example, on your website needs to stand out. It can't just be generic. So we want to tell your story. Let me introduce you to somebody who can help you tell that story. I mean, Keith is a prime example, right? Keith, you guys do content development, and
right.
it's all about telling the story of the company that is your client and getting it out there. The authentic story, right? There's nothing better than an authentic story, and getting it out to the right people, right? So I focus on the technical side, right? I mean, I do have a network of people that focus on branding and design and content, like Keith.
Well,
But
it's really what I'm seeing or hearing is kind of goes back to that people, process, and technology, right? So the people part is getting the right skill set. So you can design an application and it can have a blank screen, and then a graphic designer comes in and gives it the visual perspective, and the branding person helps get the story down so that it connects with the audience, and I come in and take that and develop content so you have an experience. So there's all of these people have to work together.
yes, it's as you pointed out, it is like a band, right? You need the players you need the bass player, the guitarist, the drummer, the keyboardist. You need everybody to come together to deliver the message. And sometimes, unlike a band, or maybe there probably are parallels, but it's in a sequence as opposed to all together,
Hmm.
at least to get started. Sometimes it begins with market research, right? You want to get into a new market, or you don't think your brand is resonating. Why is that?
Mhm.
And market research can be really helpful there. Doing a bunch of qualitative and maybe some quantitative studies to figure out who is my market. How do I segment this market? And then once I figure out who really is my target, then you could start spending on the imaging, the messaging, the tone, what they want to hit, the topics.
Mhm.
And of course, there are channels. The website tends to be a destination, but you bring people in from social media, from blogs, from podcasts. And we focus primarily on the website and other technical assets.
What you just made me think about, we've developed this concept here in Publio Studio that the interview is where the ideas happen, right? Then the AI can help us interpret, expand, categorize, expand upon the ideas in directions like figuring out your audience and value proposition, or coming up with a marketing plan or an editorial calendar, breaking that down into topics that you can talk about. But what the distribution and marketing of it is, we call a podcast ecosystem.
Yes.
And that is what you just described was an expanded view of the podcast ecosystem. Content has to be in the app. Content has to be on your website. Content has to be in your email marketing campaign. So I love the way you kind of encapsulated that and just kind of hit in my brain about this idea of the podcast ecosystem or content ecosystem that we've been working with for about a year now.
Yeah, and another element of it is the search engine, right? So search engine optimization, content is a critical part of that. I was just on a call yesterday with a prospect. I do have a team that does search engine optimization. Most of my teams, they are development shop, but they also do search engine optimization. And we were talking with a client who's in the motorcycle apparel business, and he's got a real passion for it. He's got a great story to tell. And I'm just saying, we need to capture all of this because what you're saying is just so compelling. And, we're going to do some interviews, or maybe, we can collaborate, but the founder really is somebody who's passionate about what he does, and he's got a following, and it makes it that much more interesting, and people want to listen to him and they want to buy his stuff, because he's got a personality, and he's got an idea that, as you say, a North Star for what he wants his company to be and what he wants his products to represent. And that kind of story is just so compelling.
First people I got involved in this whole content marketing on the internet, I had done a couple small things. I published a blog and got asked to testify to Congress. I mean, that's what kind of got me going in this whole direction, was that aha moment. But then he said, he was one of those people. He was charismatic. He knew what he was doing. He understood why he needed to be in the media. And he said, we have to be foot forward. And I've always used that idea of being, like a boxer, being foot forward. Media is something that you have to step up to do, and take some public speaking classes, work on your ideas, and be confident to express them. But then you have all the technology on the back end. So we'd love to collaborate with you if that were an opportunity. But those are exactly the kind of people who really succeed in this kind of environment.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you build your expertise. It's great if you're enthusiastic about it. Sometimes it takes people a while in their career to figure out what niche they really fit into, and what they're passionate about. And there's a big difference. You can tell if somebody's passionate about what they do and what they're selling and why they're selling it, versus somebody who is, has a job, so to speak, and it's not who they are, which is great. With working with entrepreneurs, smaller companies, they tend to be led by people who are passionate about what they do and who they are and why they're different, and how, why their customers like them. And if you could pull that out of them and have them speak compellingly about it, it's just great material.
So I'm going to refer to you as the hinge of business strategy.
I'll take it.
No, and matchmaking is a critical part, and throughout your network, you, I assume, know exactly who to go to based on the situation of the business that you're consulting with is in. So how do you vet those who you bring into a project? Because that's a reflection on you too,
Absolutely.
and it's a
Absolutely.
reflection on the team that you're assembling.
That's always a hard part of being an entrepreneur is like, who do you bring in
Yeah,
as a partner? That's a great
Right.
question.
Right. So, I mean, there's two levels to that. My core business representing software development teams, of course, I have to bring on teams that are going to do the right thing and have the skill set. So a lot of it, first of all, most of the teams that I bring on are teams that are highly recommended to me. So I already have a recommendation. And then usually, I'll start small, right? Let's do something small together, and I will learn about their style and their approach, and make sure that they're delivering what they need to deliver for the client. So it's more hands-on with a team that I am just starting with. Of course, over time, I develop the confidence in that team, understand where their real strengths are. That's part of it as well, right? Team can be really strong in a couple of areas and really not have the expertise in others. And my job is to make sure I place them into opportunities where they do have the strength. And so understanding those strengths up front, and not just their technical strengths, right? How they deal with clients, what their cost structure is. I work with teams, I represent teams that are domestic, tend to be a higher cost structure, of course, offshore, lower cost structure, and then dual shore, which is somewhere in between. And a lot of my work actually is with my dual shore teams because their cost structure, it's sort of a balance, right? They've got most of their developers offshore so they can reduce their cost structure, but the communications with the client is based here in the US. And that gives them a leg up because there's lots of complexity with dealing directly offshore. So that's another element of how do I choose the right team. On the other hand, we talked about referrals, right, with people that I'm not representing, but I know them based on their expertise, what they do, how other people that have referred them, where they focus. And that's usually what people are looking for. Do you have anybody who is a HubSpot expert, or do you have anybody who, in the case of software development, is a Sitecore expert. Sitecore is an enterprise level content management system based on Microsoft technology. And so you have to know who has that expertise.
I just thought of, as you described that, and my earlier question about the progression of technology over the last, 14 years, when you started, I think, in 2011. Um, what are your teams? Like, tell us about kind of inventory those teams and the kind of projects they work on. What expertise do they have? Because that'll probably give us a good snapshot of where we are today.
Sure. For me, I focus in two areas. One is the marketing world. So it's websites and e-commerce sites and some mobile applications. And then websites, most of them are built on content management systems like WordPress. So WordPress has become, it is the most widely used content management system out there. And for good and for bad, right? It's a great system, but because it's the most widely used system out there, it also tends to be attacked by hackers. So one thing you have to know about WordPress is you have to have the backups. You have to make sure that it's secure. So WordPress is one area. WordPress also has several e-commerce plugins, but the one that's the best known is called WooCommerce. And most of my teams that do WordPress also do WooCommerce. Then there is e-commerce more broadly. Shopify is now by far the leader for SMBs, small and medium-sized businesses. Used to be Magento. Magento's still a good product. It's an Adobe product, I believe, but it's more complex, more expensive to implement. And then there's mobile. Mobile, there's many different ways to deliver applications in the mobile environment. And you have to know what the client's looking for, right? Do you want to deliver this on their browser on their phone, or do you want to deliver it as a native application? And if you want to do that as a native application, how do you develop it? Do you develop it specifically for iPhone and for Android separately, or do you use a tool that will enable you to code once and then deploy to both systems? That tends to be more common now for obvious reasons. You're only coding once. And then we use lots of different programming languages. Sometimes people have a requirement because they already have a system in place. There are categories of programming, for example, Microsoft, that's the .NET world. There's teams that focus on that world. There's teams that focus on the most popular now is the JavaScript world. So there's different types of languages that essentially are types of JavaScript. So React is one of them. There's even backend now that is sort of JavaScript based called Node. So you have to understand how these things are put together and the languages that are available and the systems that are available, and then the teams that have those expertise. Another thing I'll add that's relatively new is the cloud expertise, right? Since most systems now are delivered over the cloud, you have to either be expert in AWS, which is the Amazon cloud, Azure, which is Microsoft's cloud, or Google Cloud Platform. Those are the leaders by far. There are a few others out there. Oracle has their cloud platform. IBM has a cloud platform. But that's now becoming more important, oftentimes referred to as DevOps, development operations, but its expertise in those areas is becoming more important.
And then how is AI creeping in, right? We had this explosion 2 years ago with ChatGPT. All of a sudden, like, lit it up. It was like very rare do you see that. It was like when Yahoo and Google hit in the 90s, or Facebook. LinkedIn just has kind of crept along and exploded, a slow explosion, but AI is probably one of the biggest I've ever seen. How's that affecting what you just described? And then my second question is, what are the applications you're seeing now?
So yeah, it's very exciting, all of the AI capabilities. And one of the nice things about it is that you don't have to build your own models. That's very complex. You have to have lots of data. You have to train your models. There are great models out there that you can tap into and add some more data to. But these large language models like ChatGPT have open APIs, so you can connect your system to them and take advantage of what they have to offer. There are transaction fees. They tend to be pretty low, but there's still a cost associated with that. So that's really where I think most companies are gonna move. They're gonna take advantage of what the Googles of the world and the Metas of the world have already built and plug into it and use these huge and very capable models that already exist. The other approach, of course, with AI is building your own model. And if you have enough data and you have a very focused idea of what you want out of it, you can build your own AI model. You have to know what you're doing. You have to have a team that's got experience doing that, because I'm sure you could spend lots of money going down the wrong path. And you asked about the types of applications. It's just amazing. I was speaking to one of my development teams yesterday, who was demonstrating to me a tool that they've developed, again, hooking into, I think it's ChatGPT, or maybe it's another one of them, that reads in, scans in documents of, let's say, invoices, and will figure out, it'll extract the relevant information, like the invoice number, the items, You have to tell it what you're looking for, and you have to feed a couple of invoices into it. But after that, it learns and enables you to basically just scan in paper, and it will pull out all the relevant information so it can drop into a database. And of course, once you have the scan, you also have the source information. So that goes into the database as well, just for backup. But that wasn't doable. You could do OCR, you could read it in, but then making sense out of the data and trying to figure out,
Right.
what's a PO number and what's an item and what's a quantity and what's an amount. The system does it for you.
You'd put it in, but you still had to write a program to process it or have a human being interface with it to have judgment. And
Right.
now it's coming back and saying, here's your 3 best customers, and here's, these 2 need help, and blah, 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 right? I mean,
this particular feature is just about capturing the relevant data from a paper, a scan of a piece of paper, right? A PO or whatever. It could be a spreadsheet that you don't have the original document, the electronic version of, or orders, whatever it happens to be. There's a lot of companies that still process a lot of paper. The government still processes a tremendous amount of paper. Things come in PDFs, and so extracting that data used to be very, and still is very, manually intensive. It's labor intensive. And you can use AI to bring some of that intelligence, right? Replace some of that intelligence with the artificial intelligence.
So we've spent 2 years, like the way Publio Studio came about was all the interviews that I was doing. And when I started, it was like 30 or 40 hours worth of work to turn it into a blog and all the posts and everything like that. And it's now down to, 8 to 10 hours because we're using cloud, because we're using AI. So what I want to do is automate this process that I've built. And I want this to be the genius bar of, and bar, no pun intended, sales, marketing, and rock and roll. I want this to be the genius bar of podcasting and content development, because you come in, you have a fun experience like this, right? Look how serious we've gotten and how much we could build off of this to develop your marketing in that presence that we talked about across all of your applications, right? And
Exactly.
I think that we need to talk because of what you're describing, and that's where I want to take this business.
Yeah, I mean, there is so much you could do, a lot of potential, and the tools are out there. Sometimes you just need to be able to tap into them, and sometimes that helps, to have a programming team figure out, where do you think that the biggest bang for your buck is going to be, and why you want to do what you want to do. And as I said earlier, proof of concept, test it out, spend a little money to test it out, make sure it works, and if it does, go with it.
Oh, now I'm going to share something I saw this week. Just what you said, that rapid application development mentality, right? And there's been over my career a movement to having it in the glass house with only a few people in lab coats knowing how to do it, to pushing it out to the end user. And I worked for a company called Metaphor, which was a Xerox spin out.
Yeah.
David Liddell was in head of research for the Xerox Park, and he couldn't get the PC funded, and so he went and started Metaphor. And I was there 10 years later, but it was at the time when the PC revolution was becoming networked, right? And so lots of innovation. So David Liddell had a completely all-in-one computer system. He had his own operating system. He had his own networking protocols. He had his own database design. He had all of the hardware was built out in California by people who cared. I mean, this was a fully integrated computer system built for analytics. So you'd go to a drawer on your desktop and you'd take out a query tool and you'd connect it to a spreadsheet tool, and you'd connect that to a charting tool, and that to the email tool, and you built a capsule. And these four little processes were put together,
Mhm.
and then you'd put the SQL in the query and you'd define it and send it right through. And every week, and you could automate that. And every week the report came out, and that was his vision. So, and that was what they invented at Xerox. So the other day I'm scrolling somewhere, I think it was Facebook, and I found a company called Mind Studio.
Interesting.
And it's the same programming, kind of object-oriented programming that David Liddell saw when he started Metaphor.
Mm.
But now your icons are ChatGPT, Google
Right.
Doc, right? And you're pulling, so that's where, building on what you said, I think what you're doing is going to move to the end user, and there will always be need for the skills that you have because you have to support that. But the further you push it out to the edge, the more intelligence you get because people are interacting with it.
Absolutely. There's a tremendous amount of value in, focusing on your area of expertise and leveraging other tools to pull in, what they do best. And that's now, much more possible because of the growth in open APIs, so application programming interfaces. Almost any new big, software tool that's out there on the internet will offer an API for developers to tap into, because the end user doesn't necessarily want to understand any of the intricacies of that tool, but they want to be able to benefit from it. And it's the programming team's responsibility for pulling those things together. Now it's even being done within a program. It's called microservices. So, and it's a great way to develop applications. You're developing these small components that speak to each other essentially through APIs. And the wonderful thing about that approach is that if you need to upgrade something, you usually only need to upgrade one module, right? And it's much easier to do that as long as you know what the inputs and outputs are and what's expected of that module. You can upgrade that without affecting everything else, potentially detrimentally.
So
So
I
it
was
makes
I was CMO and got laid off in the pandemic for a company that developed financial applications for hedge funds. They used Kubernetes to coordinate all of those little pieces talking to each other, right? And to the marketer and salesperson, we're diving deep on tech, but I can make it make sense for you, because this is what I learned working for that company. I couldn't program my way out of a paper bag, but I can understand how to apply technology. So imagine you're a business person and you want to deploy something. You hire Michael, right? We hire you, you build an app, and that service that company is delivering by software used to be extremely expensive to keep up to date.
right.
And if think about the way you use a Google email or Google Docs or Sheets, right? If they want to change a component like how the printer works or how to underline and bold, right? A new way to do this. It used to be you'd go get discs, and then they started delivering it over to the cloud, but you had to download it and install it. Well, now that component changes and it accommodates the new kind of printer and everybody's happy. And it never affected you using the spreadsheet,
Right.
right?
Yeah. I mean,
That just swapped out by itself.
that's the idea. As long as you maintain sort of consistency with the inputs and the outputs, or make it backwards compatible, right? You can always add more sort of instructions, what your tool will understand and how it will respond. One thing you want to be careful about, though, is replacing older stuff, right? Because once you replace older stuff and it no longer works, you've basically just messed up a whole bunch of clients who are on that older stuff, and that could be really frustrating, right? So your clients are depending on you, and you have to make sure that there is this backwards compatibility, even as you advance your tool or your microservice that you're offering.
Right.
And therein lies the beauty of having a great team surrounding you that are experts in each one of these areas, that you could ultimately come up with a solution for your clients.
Yeah, I mean, in some respects, you could abstract this concept of microservices to what we do as marketing services providers who have niche capabilities, right?
Mm.
You're plugging in the team for the right team with the right skill set when the client needs it, and then they pull out and somebody else comes in, or they work collaboratively and perhaps using some sort of collaboration tool, for example, and these different pieces that are in fact experts, once they can collaborate and communicate successfully, they can become a very powerful team.
Yeah.
And you don't need to hire the large agency anymore that says, oh, we can do it all. But when you look under the cover, you can see this dysfunctions, right? There's oftentimes dysfunctions within the company that they try to hide, right? I think IBM, which you worked for and I worked for, actually was classic at that. They would buy a whole bunch of different companies up, and then they would market it under one name. They'd say, here it is, here's the solution, and then you'd find out, well, those pieces don't work together. And if you can deliver, and I think that's where a lot of businesses are going, let's bring in the right person, the right video production shop, the right email marketing team, the right design shop, and as long as you have people in house who can coordinate that, you can become much more effective and cost effective because you aren't paying the overhead of a large organization.
Right.
Yeah. And the internet facilitates those communications to build those teams.
Yeah, it's amazing, and now it's made it, of course, the world. You can access people all over the world. Challenges that will be addressed by AI and are in that process are language barriers and things like that still make it somewhat difficult, but there are tools out there now that are doing simultaneous, machine-based, AI-based simultaneous translation.
One of the services we offer in Publio Studio is translation of what we record, so that you can output in multiple languages. And a friend of mine lives in Italy, and he said that's actually very popular in Europe because of the multiple languages. But it's unreal. The AI changes the mouth, right? You see
It does
your
that
head,
as well. Yeah.
the mouth changes to adapt to the new language, and yet the voice stays the same. So you hear me talking in Japanese and seeing my mouth move to that cadence.
Language. Yes. Yeah. It is quite amazing. And so, it's becoming a world marketplace. Expertise is really king, right? Finding the right expertise and working with the right people. Hence the Trusted Referral Network, focused on marketing services. A lot like a band. You got to find that drummer, you got to find that the guitarist, and you got to work together, and it's got to.
Right. And then you got to go sell stuff.
And then you got to go
sell tickets. That's right. That's probably a great segue.
I was trying. Go ahead with your segue, and I'll tell you. Go ahead. Go.
Because the truth is, Michael, we could have a meaningful conversation for the next 2 hours, and I love it. Sure. This has been, Keith and I learned from our guests too, and I've learned from you, and it's been fascinating. The other segment to this, of course, sales marketing is rock and roll.
Is rock and roll, exactly.
So we're interested in your experience in rock and roll, maybe some good stories or a first.
Yeah, I'm not nowhere near as
before
big.
You get started, my segue was going to be your favorite band has to be Devo.
They say that people are stuck in the music when they were 23 years old or something like that, around that point somehow. And so, I listen to a lot of like 80s music, and I'm not as big a rock and roll fan as I think either of you two are, The one who influenced me most was my brother. I'm the youngest of four. My oldest brother's 7 years older than me. And he was the one that was most, he would spend money on buying albums. But back then in the 60s and 70s, it was, the Beatles and the Doors and the Rolling Stones. And so that's what I learned. Cream, great. And I still remember the album covers. But I didn't go to a lot of concerts. I did go to a Bruce Springsteen concert. I remember that one. But and we recently, actually, my brother, the one I'm talking about, recently turned 70 last September. And so we decided, my siblings and I, we all went to a concert to celebrate a concert called Sound on Sound. You probably know it. It's in Bridgeport. And it's a 2-day thing. It's a whole weekend. But we had a great time, but I couldn't even tell you who the performers were. I'm still in the 80s. But we had a lot of fun.
Right. You have some serious chops in the 60s and 70s as classic rock and roll.
Yeah, I enjoy it, but I can't say like I'm a super fan. But I really appreciate when folks are like gung ho about it. It's just great to see people enthusiastic and really passionate about it.
Well,
I also have one thing I think I've learned this about myself. I've always had difficulty understanding the lyrics. Somehow the music, and maybe some people they just understand the lyrics. They can hear it through all the music. I have difficulty with that. And so it does take a little bit of the meaning out of it, right? If you can't understand what they're saying. And clearly that depends on, how heavy the rock and roll is, right? The harder it is to understand too.
Yeah.
But I think that makes a difference. If I see the lyrics, then I sort of get it, right? What they're saying about.
I'm actually kind of having to put my jaw back up because I've never heard anyone express that experience, but I do the same. I have to go look the lyrics up.
Right.
I like to try and listen to well-produced rock and roll and say, oh, there's 3 lead guitars. There's the bass line. There's, isolate on and I can do that in my head, but I have a hard
that's a
time
real skill.
listening to the lyrics.
And if you're a musician, of course, you can appreciate it that much more, right? If you know what it takes to play a riff or whatever it happens to be, then you can appreciate the talent that's up there, right? I was one of those kids who was a reluctant, I took piano lessons because my mom said, you got to take, choose your punishment or choose your torture. So for me, it wasn't self-motivated. So it wasn't all that fun, right? I had to practice.
It was a must do.
What's that?
It was a must do.
It was a must do, yeah. And so it's much better. We told our kids, listen, if you want to take up an instrument, feel free. We'll buy you whatever instrument you want. And only one of them picked it up, and that was my son, who picked up drums, and he was very good. And of course, drums apparently are in demand, right? If you're a good drummer.
Yeah. Well, it's the sane drummer that you're trying to find.
The same drummer. Yeah. He actually, interestingly enough, he was the drummer in the all-male musical comedy group at University of Pennsylvania, where he went to school. It's a great group called Mask and Wig, and they're very tight, even the alumni. And he had the chance to be an actor, but they said, we really need a drummer. So we said, sure, I'll be the drummer. And he was great.
Well, what I love is there's those kind of stories, right? About the history. There's the technical side of music. And then there's the experience, right? You're an 80s guy. We had another person who was an early 90s person. And I was so surprised. He said, Aerosmith was the soundtrack of my high school teenage, breaking up with my girlfriend, getting my first car, like all of those experiences. And I was like, me too, but that was in the 70s.
Yeah, I think also that your teens, there's some songs that it's almost like smells, right? You hear the song and it brings you back to a certain place in time because that was playing, and for some reason it just clicked. Yeah, that definitely happens. There are definitely some songs. I was just mentioning to my girlfriend one that we heard, and I said it just brings me back to I can't remember the name of the song. Anyway, I was working at a summer camp, and I remember before the summer camp started, we had to get the summer camp. It was a day camp, get it ready, and I was spent a Saturday, painting the tennis courts, and that song just kept on playing. And so whenever I hear that song, I see myself painting the green on the tennis court. Strange things, it's this emotional connection, right? Music, and
Yes.
also, interestingly enough, I think also odors, smells, they
Yes.
bring you back immediately to the
Absolutely.
emotion.
Yeah, like when you
Absolutely.
smell all the beer at a concert.
Whatever it happens to be, right?
That
Or
brings
something.
back a flood of different memories.
Yeah. Well, this has
Exactly.
been great. I have actually a meeting to get to. I think this is the record for our longest podcast, but
Oh,
Yeah.
really? I love talking to you
Yes.
guys. You're great.
this has
Likewise.
been, yeah, absolutely. Tom, you always ask the best questions. Michael,
Yes,
this has
thank you
been
both.
fun, and I can't wait to share this with your network. We're a little behind between the holidays, and I just got a new gig as CMO of a EV charging company
Congratulations.
that we're
Right.
I would
doing.
love to
And
talk to you about it. I
I,
have some experience in that world, in my
do
consulting
you?
world. So, and I have some
It's
connections for you.
It's all Salos. It's called EVAS Solutions. They're a technical integrator. The CEO and I met in the 90s. He called me and said, "Can you build this website for me?" And I said, "Yes." And I gave him the price. I forget, 50 grand. And he goes, "If you can get it on time, I've made a commitment to the board. You get it done on time, there's a 10% bonus in it for you." And
Wow.
we went on, and I think I've told you about my Homeland Security startup we did, putting radiation sensors on the internet.
I don't think so. Go ahead.
Well, that was an adventure.
Another
I'll have
time.
to tell you sometime. He and I met over that, and we took that to market. And he just called me and said, "Dude, I'm getting the band back together again." And so we're
Nice.
in startup mode for that, and doing these interviews, and it's just really great how things are coming together this year. And Tom, you're a big part of that, so thanks.
Of course.
Yeah, really cool. One thing I'll just leave you with, I have a plug-in hybrid, because I'm gently moving into that world. But one of the things that I learned is that most people don't know what it costs them to charge their car, right? And whether they're getting better mileage, so to speak, by plugging it in than by filling it up. Now I can do that because I've got a plug-in hybrid. Turns out it's cheaper for me to fill it up, but I feel guilty about doing that, so I'll charge it in. Yeah, I guess electricity is expensive out here in Connecticut.
In,
So
Interesting, and I think that, yeah, I'm learning. I've been working with these guys for about a year. We're learning so much about it, and I just saw an article about that. Is people don't know that difference. So that's fascinating. You have a ground level view of it. What we're doing is going to businesses and saying, "You have a parking lot. That's an asset. Put
yeah,
chargers in, and let's work on a business model for you." So we're doing the technical integration and the business side, and then building the apps to support that
yeah. And particularly
loyalty
if they're right
program.
off a highway or something, right? If they're right off
Yep,
a highway, perfect
yep.
spot, right?
If you're a country club or an athletic club, right? If you have people that come and park for 3 or 4 hours, and you can understand what the percentage of people are that will use it, you can
Mhm.
either charge for it, offer it as a service, or just have the app do the charging and just pay you a check and basically license out your parking lot.
Yeah, yeah. All sorts of
Mm.
different models.
Yep.
We'll talk
So
about it offline.
we will. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
joining us on LinkedIn,
Pleasure.
Facebook, and YouTube, and we'll catch you all next week.